Welcome in, everybody, to another Bracketology update here on this Thursday, March 14th. And we are just days away from finding out the field of 68 and ultimately the field of 64, which is going to set up a terrific March Madness bracket. What today we're going to be looking at is the updated Bracketology based on the Bracket Watch, the bubble, the risers and fallers. And then after that, we'll get right into our predictions. But before we get into that, question of the day: what double-digit seed in this tournament do you think that can pull off the upset? Let me know down in the comments and your answers. So let's get right into the Bracket Watch. Not much change from when we looked at this just a couple of days ago on Tuesday. Top overall seed out of the Big Ten is the Purdue Boilermakers. Like I mentioned, I don't really see anything changing outside of that. Now, I could see a scenario if Purdue gets bounced early in the Big Ten championship tournament, and if Houston runs the table and wins the Big 12, that's about the only scenario that I could see. But I think that there's at least three of the top one seeds pretty much locked up: Purdue, UConn, and then Houston. And then you'll have I don't think Arizona is going to be the number one seed. They lost to USC this past weekend. So that last number one seed is probably going to come down to Tennessee, North Carolina. I think it pretty much if North Carolina wins their ACC tournament and Tennessee doesn't win their SEC, that might be the determining factor. So that's probably the last two teams vying for that last number one spot. The first team out is Texas A&M. Texas A&M will be in action today in the SEC tournament, and they need a win, maybe two, to get into the big dance. And the last team in, Indiana State, like I mentioned on Tuesday, Indiana State's going to be sweating it out on Selection Sunday. They were bounced by Drake in the conference tournament championship, so we'll see if their resume holds. But as of now, they're the last team into the field. Let's move on down here. We have some big games today. As we see here, the winning and end today is Mississippi State versus LSU. That tips off early on Thursday. And then Virginia versus Boston College got a huge victory last night against Clemson. And then out without this win, you have some big games today: St. John's versus Seton Hall, Pittsburgh versus Wake Forest. That's pretty much a win and you survive. Out a lose and you're pretty much out. Texas A&M versus Ole Miss tonight. And then you have a big Iowa versus Ohio State. Both of those teams are in need of a deep run to get into the tournament. And then we see Colorado versus Utah or Arizona State. And then we have South Florida versus East Carolina and Tulsa. That kicks off on Friday. And so let's go on now to the bubble. The last four byes are Oklahoma, Michigan State, Seton Hall, and Mississippi State. All those teams will be in action today. Oklahoma, though, got bounced last night in the Big 12 tournament against TCU. Michigan State will be in action against Minnesota. Seton Hall will be in action today as well. And then Mississippi State will face off against LSU today. Last four in is Colorado, Virginia, St. John's, and Indiana State. All those teams will be in action as well. First four out: Texas A&M, Wake Forest, New Mexico, Villanova. Villanova got a 1-point victory last night against DePaul to hang on, but I just don't see Villanova making it to the tournament without winning the Big East tournament. New Mexico got a huge victory last night against Air Force. It wasn't really much of a ball game. Texas A&M, Wake Forest will be in action today. And then the next four out: Pittsburgh, Kansas State, Providence, and Iowa. Kansas State did get a huge victory last night against Texas to keep their hopes alive. Providence got a huge victory as well to keep their hopes alive too. So let's move on to how the play-in will shape out. Right now, the 16 seed matchups will be Norfolk State versus Grambling State. That would be automatic qualifiers. Stetson and Wagner, they both won their respective conference tournaments, so they're locked into the big dance. They face off against each other in the 16 seed matchup. And then the 11 seed matchups, you have St. John's going up against Indiana State. St. John's got a big game today against Seton Hall. The winner of that is likely in the tournament, probably a lock to win to get into the dance too. And then the next 11 seed matchup is Colorado and Virginia. Let's move on down to the risers and fallers. Probably won't be too much of a change since Lenardi's been updating this daily during conference championship week. So we see in the Midwest not really any changes in the Midwest. So let's go on to the East. Nebraska up to an 8 seed. Texas down to a 9 seed after last night's loss to Kansas State. So we see the Longhorns moving down from an 8 to a 9. Nebraska, on the other hand, moves up from a 9 seed to an 8 seed. And then really the only other change, we see Oklahoma moving down to a 10. Oklahoma was a number 9 seed the last time we checked this bracket. Now they're in the 10 seed and in the same region as UConn, North Carolina, and so forth and so on. West, let's go. TCU moves up to a 9 seed after that big victory last night against Oklahoma. So they moved from a 10 seed to a 9 seed. I think that they're either going to be an 8 or a 9 seed once it comes to this field. St. Mary's moves up to a 6 seed after winning the West Coast Conference Championship against Gonzaga a couple of days ago. And then really the only change in the South is Colorado State moving up to a 9 seed. So they move up a couple of spots from the 10 seed to the 9 seed. So minimal changes. I expected that. There's probably going to be more changes once a lot of these teams get in action on Thursday. So that's going to be it for our portion of the bracketology update. Now let's go ahead and make our predictions. If there's going to be any changes, at least on our side, on who we think is going to make it to the Final Four in Phoenix, Arizona this year. So we're going to be filling out a bracket. Let's go on to the top left portion of the bracket where we have the number 1 overall seed Purdue, where they face off against the 16 seed Norfolk State and Grambling. I think that Grambling would win that matchup. Grambling did get a big victory to keep their hopes alive in the SWAC championship, but I think that Purdue, just too much talent on this team to get bounced early on. So I think that Purdue advances to the second round. We have a great 8-9 matchup, Boise State and Florida Atlantic. But I am going to go with the over 8 upset. I'm going to go with FAU. We saw last year they have a lot of experience on their team. They've been inconsistent, but we'll see if they can pull off another run like they did last year. Then we have our first 5 and 12 seed with Nevada and Richmond. Richmond is definitely a scary team. Now, Richmond, to get into the tournament, they have to win the A-10 Conference Championship. Dayton's already a lock. Their resume is already good enough. They don't have to win it. But if anybody else outside of Richmond, say Loyola Chicago, then Loyola Chicago would take over Richmond. And then if Dayton wins it all, then the A-10 would just be a one-bid conference. So let's go 5 and 12, Nevada and Richmond. I do like Nevada. Nevada has a lot of experience that I think that's really going to suit them well. And that defense plays very physical. So I think that Richmond will have some trouble scoring against the Wolfpack. So give me Nevada. 4 seed Auburn, 13 seed Charleston. Charleston is in the tournament after defeating Stony Brook in overtime to win their conference championship. But I think that Auburn is due here for a little deep run. I do want to see how they fare in the SEC tournament before Selection Sunday. If they get bounced early, then I could definitely change my viewpoint of how I see Auburn. But Auburn's really been playing well down the stretch. 6 and 11 seeds, Washington State and James Madison. You got to have an upset at some point. Give me the Dukes. I really like them. 30 wins on the season, and they started their season knocking off Michigan State. It was really like for the past couple of weeks, it's been App State in this bracket, but James Madison ended up winning against Arkansas State to win the Sun Belt. So give me the Dukes. I think that they're going to be one of the fan favorites to go far. Iowa State, 14 seed Oakland. Oakland's a phenomenal. Their head coach has been there for 40 years. So that's a great story in Oakland, but I think that their story ends here with Iowa State. Iowa State's defense come to play. So I think that's going to be the difference in that matchup too. 7 seed Florida, 10 seed Michigan State. I hope that we don't see this. I definitely have high upside on both of these teams. That now they are inconsistent. Florida, like I mentioned last time we saw them, lost on the road to Vanderbilt. They face off against Georgia tonight. So we'll see if the Gators can get back on track. Michigan State needs a win today against Minnesota to keep their hopes alive. But I am going to go with the Gators here. I think that Florida is one of those high upside teams where they either get bounced early or can make a deep run. Number 2 seed Marquette, 15 seed Quinnipiac. I am going to go with Marquette. Marquette has a big matchup tonight, so we'll see if they can continue their run. I would like to see them make a deep run and get them healthy before March because Tyler Kolek, one of their best players on that team, is out with an injury. So we're going to go ahead and continue this region with number 1 seed Purdue, number 9 seed FAU. I think that Purdue advances on, though. I think that FAU would definitely be a scary number 9 seed to face in the second round. 5 seed Nevada, 4 seed Auburn. Nevada's defense versus Auburn's high-powered offense. I think that offense takes the cake in this one, so give me Auburn. 11 seed James Madison, 3 seed Iowa State. Last bracketology update that we did, I had the Dukes moving on, and really nothing's changing for me. I think that Iowa State is a phenomenal team, but I think that there's going to be at least one double-digit seed to make a run to the Sweet 16. I feel like that's pretty much a tradition every year, so you got to pick at least one. I think that James Madison really has some upside to make some noise. 7 seed Florida, 2 seed Marquette. I've been on the fence with this one. It really depends on what Florida team shows up in this one. I'm going to go with another upset here. I'm going to change it up. I'm going to go with Florida to pull off the 7-2 matchup here. So we have 1 seed Purdue, 4 seed Auburn. I'm going to go with another upset here. I definitely think that Auburn's one of my teams that I'm eyeing to make a deep run, as long as they don't get bounced early in the SEC tournament. So we'll see. And then we have 11 seed James Madison and 7 seed Florida. This would be a terrific basketball game, but I'm going to go with an all SEC matchup here in the Elite Eight. Give me 4 seed Auburn, 7 seed Florida. So a little bit of chaos here in the Midwest region. So we have Auburn and Florida. Give me Auburn to advance to the Final Four. Bruce Pearl makes it a return to the Final Four. I believe the last time that we saw the Auburn Tigers was in 2019 when they lost to Virginia in that game. Then we have, let's shift over to the East, where we had number 1 seed UConn facing off against 16 seed Longwood. Congratulations to the Longwood for winning their conference championship, but this is a tough draw against the defending champs. Give me UConn. They're really looking good, so I think that UConn's due for another big run here in March. Number 8 seed Nebraska, number 9 seed Texas. I think Nebraska, if they get hot from three-point, they're going to be a tough out. I think that Nebraska is one of those 8-9s where they could pull off the upset if they get a really good draw here with a 1 seed. So give me Nebraska to pull that one off in the 8 and the 9. 5 seed South Carolina, 12 seed Grand Canyon. I do like Grand Canyon here as a 12. I just don't think that this is a good matchup for them. South Carolina just knows how to win. So give me the Gamecocks. And then we have 4 seed Kansas, 13 seed Sanford. I think that Kansas, they are coming off of a tough loss last night, but McCullers and Dickinson was out for them. So Bill Self is saying that they're both going to be healthy. But I think that Kansas is going to be one of those teams that a lot of people are going to be picking in the first round. Sanford is a scary 13. Do we do it? I'm going to say that Kansas survives at least one more round. I think that their talent alone moves them on, but their depth is really concerning to me. I just don't. So we'll see. I mean, all the doubters, they could prove us wrong. Kansas could just prove all the doubters wrong and make it to the Final Four. So we'll see. 6 seed Clemson against St. John's and Indiana State. I honestly would take either or to pick Clemson. Clemson, a bad loss last night against Boston College. So give me St. John's or Indiana State in that one. Just pick the letter. I think that both could be Clemson. Clemson's really in the wrong direction. So I think that they're going to be one of those 6 seeds to get upset. So give me the play-in winner of that, whether it's St. John's or Indiana State. 3 seed Kentucky against 14 seed Morehead State. I am going to go with Kentucky. Kentucky's really been playing great basketball. Their offense is elite. So I think that offense can really take them far. 7 seed Gonzaga, 10 seed Oklahoma. Oklahoma has just been in a downward spiral lately, so I'm going to go with Gonzaga. Even after with the loss against St. Mary's, they've really been playing well in the second half of the season to really save their hopes of making it to the dance. And then we have number 2 seed North Carolina and 15 seed Colgate. Man, Colgate's an absolute dynasty that they're building there in the Patriot League, once again beating Lehigh and really not so close of a fashion. So Colgate, I would like them in any other matchup, but North Carolina's a tough 2 seed to face. So give me UNC to move on here. So let's continue on to the second round matchups here in the East, where we have UConn and Nebraska. I think that Nebraska would give UConn a scare, but there's too much talent on this UConn team to get bounced early. And then 5 seed South Carolina, 4 seed Kansas. I think that South Carolina, like I mentioned, not really a fan right now of Kansas, so give me South Carolina. And then St. John's and Indiana State versus 3 seed Kentucky. Great run for the play-in game winner, but I think that the Cats move on to the next round. Then we have 2 seed Gonzaga, 2 seed UNC. I did pick Gonzaga a couple of weeks ago to pull off this upset, but I am going to go with North Carolina to advance to the Sweet 16. So we have Sweet 16 matchup set, UConn and South Carolina. I'm going to go with UConn against South Carolina in this one, and then Kentucky and North Carolina. I hate to go all chalk here, but I'm going to go with North Carolina to advance against Kentucky. So we have UConn and North Carolina. Man, this would be a real tough and physical matchup between both of those teams, but it's just hard to go against UConn right now. I'm going to go with UConn to advance to the Final Four. Once again, let's go on now to the South region, where we see the number 1 overall seed Houston. Their first matchup would be 16 seed South Dakota State. Give me the Cougars. They are looking red hot right now heading into March Madness. The number 8 seed Northwestern, 9 seed Colorado State. Going to go with the Big Ten here. Go with Northwestern to advance in the 8 and the 9. 5 seed San Diego State, 12 seed Princeton. Princeton did it a year ago. I think that they do it again. Give me the upset. Got to have at least one 12/5. So give me the Princeton Tigers out of the Ivy League to advance. And then we have 4 seed Alabama, 13 seed UC Irvine. The Anteaters are definitely one of those teams that could pull off the upset, but I don't see it here. Give me Alabama to move on. And then we have Wisconsin facing the winner of Colorado and Virginia. I think that Colorado would win that one, but ultimately the Badgers would move on to the second round. And then we have 3 seed Duke, 14 seed Vermont. Give me Duke to move on. I think that this is one of those teams that could definitely make a run. 7 seed Texas Tech, 10 seed Drake. This is a very good match. 2 very good teams, but give me the Texas Tech Red Raiders to advance to this one. And then 2 seed Creighton, and then 15 seed Sam Houston. Give me Creighton in this one. Blue Jays continue their run in March. So second round matchups here in the South. 1 seed Houston, 8 seed Northwestern. I am going to go with Houston to advance to the Sweet 16. I mean, it feels like a lock for them to make it to the Sweet 16. 12 seed Princeton, 4 seed Alabama. Princeton made it to the Sweet 16 last year. Did they do it again? No, I think that the Tide roll on to the Sweet 16. And then we have Wisconsin and Duke. We saw this matchup a couple of years ago in the Final Four, but I think that Duke moves on to the Sweet 16. And then Texas Tech and Creighton. This would definitely be a spicy upset to pick. Do I do it? You know what? Let's do it. Let's have some fun here. I'm going to go with Texas Tech. Pull it off the 7/2. I pulled it off with Florida. Give me Texas Tech to advance to the Sweet 16. Houston and Alabama. I am going to go with Houston to move on. I think that's a pretty easy pick for me. Bama, a little bit inconsistent for me to move them on too far. And then Duke and Texas Tech. Texas Tech pulled off the upset. Can they do it again? No, they cannot. I have the Duke Blue Devils moving on to the Elite 8. So we have Houston and Duke. I got to go with Houston moving on. Would be a great matchup between those two teams, but I am going to go with Houston. So let's move on now to the opposite side. Our last bracket that we could fill out here, Tennessee facing off against the winner of Stetson and Wagner. I'm going to go with Tennessee in that one, but I do like Stetson in that matchup. So give me Rocky Top to advance to another round. Dayton and TCU. I'm going to pull off the slight 9/8 upset. Going to go with TCU to pull off that one. And then we have 5 seed and a 12 seed with BYU and South Florida. Like I mentioned in the last bracketology, South Florida has to win their American championship to even have a spot in this one. If they lose, they're out. So I think that BYU though gets the job done here. So give me BYU to advance. And then we have 4 seed Illinois, 13 seed McNeese. I knew I said last time that this is a tough matchup, but screw it. I'm going to go with another upset. I'm going to go with McNeese, the Cowboys, and the Fighting Will Waits to move on to the second round. And then we have St. Mary's and Mississippi State. Mississippi State has a big matchup today against LSU. St. Mary's won the West Coast Conference tournament. Look out for St. Mary's. I think that they could be a sneaky 6 seed that could really make some noise here in March. And then 3 seed Baylor, 14 seed Toledo. We're going to go with Scott Drew and the Baylor Bears to move on to the round of 32. And then we have Utah State and Seton Hall. This is a tough matchup for me. I picked Seton Hall last time. Let's switch it up and let's go with Utah State out of the Mountain West to advance. 2 seed Arizona, 15 seed Montana State. I am going to go with Arizona to move on in that one. Montana State just won the Big Sky last night against their rivals, Montana. Number 1 seed Tennessee versus number 9 seed Purdue. You know what? This is time for chaos. Time for a 9/1 upset. I'm going to go with TCU over Tennessee. Every year I pick the 8/9 over the 1. I think that this is the right time for it. Don't get me wrong. Tennessee is a loaded squad, but I think that TCU pulls off the upset here. And then I'm just noticing there's going to be a lot of Big 12 here. We have BYU, Ig McNeese, the 5 and the 13. Give me BYU to move on to the Sweet 16. And then we have St. Mary's facing off against Baylor. I'm going to go with Baylor to move on into this Sweet 16. And then we have Utah State, Arizona. I think that this would be a great matchup, Utah State and Arizona, but I already pulled off too many 7/2s, so I'm going to go with Arizona to move on to this one. TCU and BYU in the 9 and the 5. I'm going to go with BYU. This is definitely an underrated team. I think that they have a big matchup today against Texas Tech. We'll see if they can take that one. But in the battle of the Big 12, I'm going to go with BYU and the 5 seed. And then we have 3 seed Baylor, 2 seed Arizona. I'm going to go with Arizona to move on to this one. And I'm also going to move Arizona to the Final Four. So in this one, so our Final Four is set. We have a 4 and a 2 of Auburn and Arizona, and then we have UConn and Houston. So let's finish up the bracket here with number 4 seed Auburn, seed Arizona. I'm going to go with Arizona out of the Pac-12 in this one to make it to the national championship, and then UConn and Houston. Give me Houston. So we have a 2 and a 1 in the national championship game, where I'm going to continue my trend of picking Houston. I know that they're the number 1 team, but it's really hard to pick against them right now. We'll see if that changes once this field is revealed on Sunday. So that's going to be it for us on this bracketology update here on Thursday. That will probably be it, the last one that we do. Maybe I'll sneak in one on a Friday and Saturday. It just really depends on if there's any chaos happening. So tune into that if we do decide to do that. But if not, tune into our official March Madness prediction show, whether that's going to be Sunday night or Monday night. So definitely stay tuned to the channel.